and what can be. Afrofuturism goes hand in hand with sci-fi, but it's seen through the Black lens. And
would that be like Afrofuturism? Would that be like Sun Ra, George Clinton, Funkadelic? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And all of that music is like, you go outside of what people see you as.
Yeah.
Create the world that you want people to see you in. You create the characters that you want people to associate you with. You create the world that you thrive in, and that's really what my motivation has been.
And there's a lot of good, like the Funkadelic. There's a lot of good comedy in some of that too.
It is. I mean, I think humor is a good way to deal with pain and trauma, and most times that's what we use as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, for sure. Now, can you tell me, like, when you started to conceive of the first couple records, like what was the sort of the basis of the kind of Metropolis concept?
Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Sure.
Inspired, of that particular project, and it was the haves, because there's a constant battle between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
The working class and the rich, privileged. And there was a quote in there that said, the mediator between the hands and the mind is the heart. And I said, that's what I want to represent.
The heart.
I want to represent the heart. I want my music to represent the heart. I want my music to represent that bridge that brings people together. I want what I represent to be a magnet for those who are seeking self-acceptance, for those who are seeking community, for those who are choosing their freedom over their fears. And
choosing like their own, the freedom of pursuing their own identity, whatever that may be.
Sure, absolutely. If it's rooted in love, if it's rooted in evolution and teaching of what it means to exist, if it's rooted in those things, then I'm always going to be an advocate for it.
So that whole concept, like, because it's hard for me to put it all together, but the Metropolis concept sort of moves through two or three albums that you did?
Yeah, I started off wanting to do suites, which are kind of like EPs, maybe 5 or 6 songs. And I did. I released that as a 5 or 6 song. And then I did the Arcandroid, which was a double suite, suites 2 and 3. And I forget which suite I'm on now, but we're going to continue it. It just depends on where my spirit is. We have other, exciting things with those projects, because people are now looking at them as like, oh, wow, this could be a film, or this could be, a graphic novel. And so we're exploring those avenues now.
So you have other people that are creative minds that are sort of like, why not build this out? Let's make a character. Let's have a movie.
Well, that was always the intention. I mean, if you come to my shows, that performance,
you can tell,
that it's not about just releasing, a compilation of music or just songs. No, These are worlds. This is world building. And a lot of our heroes, from David Bowie, who was do Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, was just like one of my favorite albums from him. And he was also able to act, and he was just an idea, that was always constantly trying to realize itself and to speak. And that's what has encouraged me. People have come before me and they've done concept albums, and they've created worlds, and when you go see them live and when you listen to it, you're just like, oh, this is bigger than just an album. This is a world, and like them, I want to continue to create that.
It's interesting though, because like I haven't seen you live in concert, and I've watched some of the videos, but even though that you choose these performances and these worlds and these concepts, you're a type of performer that there's something raw that always seems to come through. I always seem to feel like there's a real human in there and a real humanity to it. Like even when, like just watching the way you took over the Oscars that night. There was such a presence to it all that the sort of rawness of it, whatever you were doing in that moment, made the entire undertaking look ridiculous to me. Like your presence made the Oscars look small.
Oh my goodness. Don't say that. Don't say that, because you'll have some people upset with you about that one.
You know what I'm saying? That somehow or another, even though you create these, like the alter egos and whatnot, there's something about what you're talking about, that sort of love or that authenticity that you managed to come through. And I don't know that I always saw that with Bowie. You know what I mean? I thought when Bowie got lost in a thing, he was lost in a thing to the point where, at the end of it all, you don't really get a sense that you knew who that guy was at all. And that's part of his beautiful mystique. But I feel like, you seem to shine through. You don't seem to be hiding, really. Are you?
Thank you. I mean, I think we all are.
Yeah.
I think that we go through trauma. We go through unpacking that trauma as kids.
Like what? Like what was your particular thing that you had to unpack?
Well, my dad was in and out of prison, for instance.
Yeah.
And he's not in prison anymore. He was also a victim of the system. I mean, he had a drug addiction problem.
Yeah.
But instead of getting him rehab, they put him in jail.
Right.
And that's just something that we have to talk about. We have to talk about mass incarceration. We have to talk about mental health.
Sure.
And my dad wrote a book, and he is, sober now. He's amazing. We're best friends. But growing up, he was in and out of my life. And so there would be moments where I would think he was coming to pick me up, and he just wouldn't show up. It wasn't because he didn't love me, but back then that's what I thought.
Right, of course.
I didn't realize that his addiction was his sickness was making him absent from my life. And so that spilled over into different moments of my life. Like I remember I used to put on parties. I would throw parties with my friends in high school, and we would just make money doing that.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that my abandonment issues were so bad that I thought that nobody was going to come to the party. So I would hide in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I wouldn't come out until they were like, okay, more people are here, because the feeling of people abandoning me was just so hurtful. You never wanted that pain. And I think it has also spilled over, and I didn't realize this until really like a few years ago, that it was spilling over into me as an artist. Like, let's just say, if there were certain things that I want to talk about in my music, I won't name them now, but if I wanted to talk about them, I'd be like, man, if I say this, what if people don't love me anymore?
Yeah, yeah.
What if they leave? What if they go away? And up until, me really being extra vocal about being queer, I would always talk about it in my music, but I never wanted to talk about it in interviews, because I had to have certain conversations with people that I knew loved me, but also were homophobic. And like
friends and family?
Friends and family.
Yeah.
I knew they loved me, but to look at me in that way, I was like, man, they might not love me the same. And so I had to really have these deep conversations before I put out Dirty Computer, before I really started to be more vocal about my sexuality, because I had this fear of abandonment. So I know that I wasn't alone in that. And that's what pushed me to go even harder. Right. In who I was, because I was like, there are a lot of other, Baptist raised people in small towns and communities who are fearful. And there are also people who can't talk about who they are because they could be ostracized or financially cut off or killed, know?
Yeah.
So, we're still dealing with these things, and I know firsthand what it feels like to be misunderstood or to have to have that fear of, if I wake up tomorrow after saying this, is everything gone?
Were you able to, when you started to have this struggle within yourself, were you able to sort of facilitate those conversations with your family and your friends before you sort of became more public about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how did they go generally?
I mean, my mom and like people really close to me, knew. and they were fine, but I still had to have conversations with them, because when you come in, because it's coming in to me, I'm not coming out. I don't believe in the concept of coming out. I believe in, coming in.
Which means being included, as opposed to what? How do you differentiate coming out and coming in?
Well, coming in for Black and brown people is like, we're inviting you in.
Yeah.
I'm inviting you into my space.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to come into your world and fit in.
Right. Got it. And
I felt like, and I still feel like, you constantly have to teach people, about what it means for them to come in to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are some people who, in my family that, they disapprove of me, loving myself and embracing everything about myself. And I just tell them, if you don't, and this always gets them. If you don't want to, love me for being queer or accept me for being queer, then don't take my gay queer money. Don't ask me for no money. How about that? And then they're like, oh, okay, well, now we get it.
Yeah. We like queer money.
Right. Because, listen, when people think that you are, just because you're close to somebody who has a lot of money, you now have a lot of money. They always think art. They feel like artists know, like, that there's going to be that moment where people start thinking that they are just super, 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 super rich. And
sure, of course, because they're related to you.
Business. Yeah.
So, like, do you think, like, then, well, that's sort of interesting, that fear of abandonment that runs so deep in emotional negligence with parents,
Mm-hmm.
that, do you think that some of the drive of your creativity was then in sort of an attempt at sort of self-parenting, you mm-hmm. created these other worlds and these other places where you could be safe?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of my art was born out of protection.
And so, like, the escapism of science fiction and musicals and anything that looked fantastic was probably such a relief for your heart, to be involved in that. And in fact, and before you understood the feelings maybe about your queerness or whatever else was going on, you could embrace your otherness because you had this special world, because science fiction is its own special thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think you're right. And in my world, androids represented Black people. Androids represented members of the LGBTQIA plus communities. The untouchables represented anybody who went against the status quo and were in marginalized groups, and their voices were silenced. So that's what I use the android as a parallel.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. But also, like, it's interesting that you can have these suites and these concepts that you embrace and these different textures musically, but you can also, kick out a pretty solid hit when you want to.
Yeah. I always look at when people say hits and charts and things like that. For me, it's always like a hit is when it hits home first.
Right.
Meaning when it's honest to who I am and where I am at that time, and also people can relate to it. A large amount of people are relating to it. Then that's beautiful. Yeah,
and nobody sounds like you. No one's doing the type of musical integration that you're doing. Like, because when I was listening to some of it the other day, it was kind of interesting to me because I couldn't really fit it into I couldn't tell you what type of music it was necessarily. It was just your shit,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. How you combine it.
Yes. How you combine it, the elements that you use, the way you say something, makes it all yours.
So when did because I was thinking about David Bowie and some of the stuff that you do. Did you come to acting pretty naturally? I mean, where did that come from?
I think embodying certain characters in me made me feel comfortable,
Which ones? Which characters?
I have lots of them.
Really? Just to get through life?
Yes. I think we all have them.